Okay, we are live. So let's see. I'm going to do what they tell you not to do, and I'm going to check over on YouTube to see if we're working. We are. There's a few people here, and there's a slight delay. Good to know. Welcome, everyone. I'll switch us here to up mode. Chau, thank you so much for being here. I'm glad we could have this call together. There's not really a fixed agenda, but how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Just got back from vacations and stuff like that. So been refreshed and glad to be here. I mean,
Nice.
I'm not like an expert on NgRx either. I'm here to expect to learn something too. But yeah, we can definitely talk about all that library stuff with Nx.
Yeah. So for those tuning in or watching the recording afterwards, we started chatting briefly on Twitter when someone had posted a sort of what are your pain points with NX, and NX DevTools in particular is done by Narwhal, and Chau, you work for Narwhal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a monorepo tooling set. If you haven't heard of it, I encourage you to check it out, nx.dev. I use it on my side project. I use it at work as well. So for the last kind of year or so, I've been using it as my daily kind of tool for keeping track of my Angular projects. On top of that, I've also for a long time, a few years now, 3 years maybe, been using NgRx as my way of doing state management within the projects I had at my previous work at NetCentric, which is a consultancy. And then into my current job and my side project as well. So even with that, I'm not an expert. But there's a lot we can go into, I think, here. And in particular, I had a couple examples. We might start with one of those. It might take us a while to get through, so bear with us. I'll share my screen. We'll talk through how we would approach this, and we'll try and get into it. Those of you watching live, StreamYard should tell us if you do anything in the chat. So say hi. Otherwise, I will kind of try and check back in occasionally. Great. So let's add the screen here. And yeah, go in. Cool. Yeah. Hey, Umair, thanks for joining. Glad to see you here. Okay, so we've set up a little project here already. I ran some schematics here to get us to have a store module in the root and an effects module and the dev tools and so on. I also set up Tailwind so that I can do styles if need be. I will just commit that so our changelog here is clear.
So I guess this is my first point of discussion. So
okay.
This is probably not related to what we're trying to achieve here today, but I've been getting this question too from the Angular Vietnam community. Is that when we set up NgRx, can you open up that app module?
Yeah.
Right. And we can see that the store module for root and the first object there for the for root is like the reducers that you can pass in, right? The reducers object that you can pass in. And a lot of people ask me and ask like the moderators of the Angular Vietnam Facebook group that do you usually set up like root stores, or do we just go straight into feature store and keep like and leave this object empty?
Yeah.
So what would be your suggestions and what is your answer to that?
I mean, personally, I tend to just leave it empty. With this idea of the way the kind of best practice when you're using NX is you have your apps folder, and that's pretty lightweight. And then you have everything else in your libs, including your feature store, your store feature modules. And if you've already put something into a self-contained feature module, then what else do you need that's in the root?
Yep, and one thing, one benefit of using like the feature store exclusively is that you don't have to type your root state.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. And I've previously been talking with folks like Bram and Brandon, who are in the community, and if you know them, you know who I'm talking about. But I tend to use facades, and I did that because for a while you needed to type the store, and I think in recent versions you don't really need to anymore. And so maybe I don't need to use facades anymore, but I still get into the habit of doing that.
Because pretty much now from the store. So when we actually reach state from the store, we have these selectors, and all of these selectors probably have some kind of feature selector at first, and composed from that feature selector. And when you use the feature selector, you only need to provide the state of that feature, which you probably have if you have like the inertial state and reducer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you don't really need the root state anymore, and you still have typeset if you use the selectors in your features.
So maybe we should actually create one of these stores. So what I've done so far, and I don't even think I have a proper demo to show you. Oh, I guess I do. I just created a single app here called Druid Tracker. And for those who don't know, like one of my side projects, or my main side project, is this thing called Dungeon Mastery.app, which is for role-playing games, specifically Dungeons and Dragons for me, but it's for any dungeon master to be able to use to keep track of notes and linked records. And so you have players and locations and so on. I'm not going to demo that necessarily. That's not what this is about. But it's where I've kind of done all of my experimentation and learning and trying to figure things out. So in keeping with that same theme of that, what I want us to maybe at least scaffold out is this idea of a tracker for the Druid players within a particular campaign. And the idea is that this class of player, they have access to spells. So my thought was we will have, we'll probably build something that just pulls from the store and shows us a list of druids and what spells that they've chosen. And the idea would be each of these druids would have an interface somewhere else, maybe an additional app, where they can choose their spells and write other information about themselves. So there's input for the druid entities or objects. And then we have an editor interface for the spells themselves, which the druids, the players, the people creating those, they don't have access to edit the spell content or stats or anything like that. So that's another feature store that they're basically very separate in that regard. But in our app, we want to combine them into one list. So the druids have in the store, we'll have some IDs of the spells they've chosen, and we'll pull that from the spells store, etc. This is going to be really seat of our pants here. I don't have any data pre-prepared. I don't have any designs pre-prepared, but we'll walk through one at a time. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So let's start, I guess, with we'll come back to the actual look and feel of it after we launch, but we need to set some stuff up first. So we have our app here. At some stage, we will have the store being pulled in, the selectors being pulled in to populate it. But first, we need to define those stores. So in the Nx fashion, we should create some libs for these. Here's a place where my understanding is a little limited, which is just to say naming them. I know there's been a lot of push towards data access as a sort of wrapper folder around things like this. Do you do that in your apps? Or do you just keep them top level?
I do. I usually have, so let's say you have a druid and spells. So those is going to be the top directory under libs, and under those it's just directory, and then under let's just create a druid directory here.
Okay. Another small point is, do you name them? I'll refer to these as entities, right? Because they are kind of concrete records that you might have in a database. So do you use singular or plural for naming the feature when it comes to it?
I use plural.
Plural, yeah. So druids. Okay,
Yep.
I do as well. Sometimes it gets a little weird when you're naming it like Druid's Store, but I still think it's appropriate.
Druid service.
Exactly.
Right, so
Okay,
in,
so Druids and spells. Cool.
So in the Druids, now how are you going to render these? Are these going to be routable feature, or just going to render like the UI directly?
So I would assume that I would want a little bit of both, right? So there would be the overview sort of page where I would see some, like all of them next to each other. Maybe there might be like only 2 or 3 or 4, something like that. But then you could potentially go in and see more details, like the kind of overview details. And potentially that details one could actually be where you edit your own particular version.
Okay. So there are a couple of ways that I'm thinking about building like a feature with like potential multiple pages. Right, like the Druids, we have like Druids list and Druids details, right?
Yeah.
I usually do is I create a features directory, plural features, and in that features directory, I would have 2 libs.
So you created
inside of Druids.
Inside of Druids,
yep,
you create features.
Features.
Okay.
And then inside of features, we want to generate 2 Angular library.
Okay. So do you do it through the command line? Because I can never remember any of those commands.
I use WebStorm, so there's a context menu that you can use to like right click and generate.
Nice. Through VS Code, I end up using the NX console.
NX console is fine. So generate Angular library.
Yeah, Narwhal's Angular library. So this schematic then brings up the generator command. And if you ever do want to copy it, this is a nice little thing that when you fill out the details, you can kind of, I love it. It's great.
Yep. So for the name, for the name now, this is entirely up to you. I call it list and details, like for each of them, because we have Druids features list.
So, okay, makes sense. So you don't put any context about the entity here. No. You'll just do it in the directory itself.
Right, because when it generates the name of this module, is going to have Druid features in front of them.
Okay.
And the directory would be Druid/features.
Yeah, this somehow doesn't like it, which is why I'm not glad I have the copy command, because I can figure it out later. This isn't the first time this has happened. Sometimes it works, other times it doesn't, but that's okay. Yeah, I don't think we need enable Ivy anymore.
No.
Not worried about this. We're using ESLint, I hope. And yeah, I think we'll just figure out the rest as we go. This is probably fine. Okay.
And I might turn off street mode, because we don't really want to deal with like TypeScript error on stream.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there shouldn't be too much coming up, but that's okay. I'll do the same.
I mean, like undefined node and stuff like that.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Okay. Let's see what happens if you run. No, it yells at me, so that's fine. I'll just... Can I copy this? Is this going to work? Let's do this. G. Oops. G. Let's see what happens. Okay, so yes, we have inside features, we have list, and then inside that we have the module.
Yep.
And all the other stuff.
So the module, so this one right here is what we're going to use to lazy load our list.
Okay.
Of things.
Okay. So
now we can work on the list now and worry about the details page later.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. So the idea again is that we're keeping the app like super lightweight to the level of we might have the routing in there that says, hey, this is where we're going. But everything from then on, UI wise and functionality wise, is going to be in the libs folder, right?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that for me is still hard. If you look at my side project, and I'm sure we'll bounce over there at least once during all of this, that's not how I have it set up. And it's gotten messy over the year and a half I've worked on it. Okay. So then we would, as with any app, start to scaffold out in here like the components we need.
Yeah, what I would do now is to generate a component for this feature, and we're going to use a router module to try to display this component. So
okay, so just get a component, and what do we call this? Druid list, or is this?
yeah, Druid list.
Still not working. I don't know why. Okay. And yeah, that's super annoying that it's not working. I'm not sure why. Well, such is how it goes. Okay. Anything else that I would want to set in here?
I would skip test.
Yeah. Don't do that in practice.
And I would turn on chain detection to on push.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Where did it go? Yeah, change detection on push.
And so you generate this application for CSS styling or SSS?
I guess I want none because I'm using Tailwind, because I'll do that all in the HTML. It's not that hard to add
Absolutely, yeah.
it later, but I end up deleting it half the time because I use Tailwind.
Yep.
Okay, don't even need that. And okay, well, let me just copy this. I really do wish that were working. All right, is this going to do what I want it to? Okay, so we've got the component in here.
Cool.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now we're going to just set up the routing for this component.
Mm-hmm.
So just for child of router module.
Oh boy. Oh no. Well, let me do this really quickly and just reload the window and see if maybe that's what's going on with things not doing what they should. Should also probably turn off Copilot. Have you been playing around with GitHub Copilot at all?
Yep.
Yeah.
But
and it's great, except when you can't find things. Yeah.
And I don't use this as much because I don't use VS Code, so I don't have many chances to play with it. It's a router module.
Jeez. Okay.
It's gonna be an array for.
Sorry, I usually copy and paste from other projects.
Yeah. Yep. That's GitHub Copilot is correct now.
Yeah. Isn't that cool? I love that.
It's pretty cool.
It's wild. Yeah, you have to read it. You got to check, but it is pretty clever about it.
It is pretty amazing.
Okay.
All right. So now I guess we need to set up the router module in app module now.
This is true as well. I'll go here and do the same thing because probably my IntelliSense is slightly off here. I'll do the same for router module and okay here. Okay, so
yes, we can have that from Copilot. Yeah, and set up a path of Druids and lazy load the other one.
Okay. Here. And I need to copy and paste.
It's fine.
Like I said, no, it's fine. I'll go to one of my other things.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember all of these because I've always got another project where I've done stuff and I can just come over and copy and paste. Yeah. So, okay. And then instead of importing from here, I want to use my alias, but I'm not sure that alias is set up yet.
It should. Should. Sometimes it doesn't work because of TypeScript not updating the tsconfig.base.json.
That's true, but I did just refresh the window. And what space?
There we go.
NgRx. Yeah, there we go. And m dot featureless module. Magic.
And we want the redirect to redirect to the Druids path. Cool.
Okay. Let me do this. I will.
Did you have router outlet in the app component HTML?
No, I don't. I should just clear this out and do that. Cool. Right now, okay, we would at least have Druid list works. So let me do Nx run tracker serve. Cool beans. Okay. Why are you yelling at me? Property assignment expected.
It seems like a bug with the generator when we say like style is none.
Oh yeah, interesting. Okay, but that worked. Okay, so if I come over here and refresh this, I get Druid list works. Huzzah. Yeah, it's pinched in only because I didn't delete the CSS yet from here, and this one has the host set to min width and max width, which is fine. I don't mind. We'll leave it.
That's fine. Yeah.
Not a big deal. Okay, cool. So yeah, let's think about what the data here might be, maybe a little bit. It's probably just going to be G4, sure, track by, and we'll say let Druid of, well, I'll probably name it all Druids, and track by, well, I'll need, can you do this? Is that actually now something you can do?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. It's fine. And I will just put in here that name. Oof, what is happening here? And track by is track by. Okay, come over here. Oh wait, I do want this to be an observable. Sync. And then I will here add all goods is an observable. Any, the dreaded any. At least tell it it's an array. And then Druid track by will take. Sure.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Thanks, IntelliSense.
I could never remember the track by syntax.
Track by is hard because it comes with index first, and you're like, I don't expect you to give me the index first. I want the Druid. Yeah, that's some pretty cool stuff. Okay, well, let's do one other thing right away here, which is, and this is maybe for further discussion, the types themselves. So I have a tendency to put everything off into its own like data models, and not keep them side by side within the feature. Sometimes I do, right? But this is where we start to get into like my main question here is, who owns a type, right? It's pretty clear we're working on the UI of this, that the feature of like this list of druids, owns the displaying of it. But the actual definition, which is going to also be used on the back end if we were to implement, use Nest.js or something, that needs to be shared between the Nest app and the front end app. So where does the TypeScript definition live in that?
Yeah. So here's my thought. When I work with like an NX application with Angular front end and like some back end, preferably with Nest.js, right?
Yeah.
I don't usually have shared type. I only have the back end to own the type and then expose like a Swagger UI and then use a tool to generate the API calls and the types for the front end. So
Okay.
technically, regardless of you're going to generate those types from the backend, or you're just going to write those types yourself, I'm going to put those types under libs share data access.
Okay.
So that
shared
all the types can reference each other.
Right.
Inside of that data access. Oh, data access is going to be a library that you're going to generate.
Got it. So we'll just start with shared. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And like we've done that on our other projects as well. It makes the most sense. Some people complain. I've had a hard time convincing our backenders at times to move these definitions outside of the features or the individual backend lib they're working on.
Absolutely, yeah.
But like that's kind of the point of having a monorepo, is you are going to share these things, and so you need to have a strategy for that.
Yep. So basically, all the types. I think in your term is like entity types, like the type that define the entities or the actors of these applications. I keep it in shared because many features can reference one type or one model or one entity, right? And in each of the feature, the type for that feature is just going to be the view models for that feature. So like the VM, and that VM can be many things.
Yeah, makes
and
sense.
That VM is not supposed to be shared. Like you have a Druid list VM, that Druid list VM is not supposed to be shared to like a spell list VM.
Right.
Even if you're going to have some duplication.
Sure. So I'll show you a quick example on my side project, which really is only one app, and as I said, bear with it because there's a few different things going on. But one of the things I did was I had this API interfaces, and specifically for the main parts of the application. There's some weird TypeScript stuff in here, but I have this notes record. That's the there can be sessions or players or locations, and they have their own little data, but they all are implementing notes record at the sort of top level. Anyway, that when I did have a Nest backend before I moved to Firebase, I was importing from here. And when I was all over the application and the libs, I import from here as well. So basically, all of my types for the whole project are defined in here. That's kind of been my go-to. So I quite like that approach. Not because I love TypeScript, and it just is nice to have them all centralized.
Yep, and I usually just have generation, and that generation is going to generate into a library.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, pretty much.
Okay. Yep. So let's do the library now too, so I can give this a type, and we're a little more confident here. So now this is working. This isn't an Angular library, right?
I would use Angular library for it.
You still use Angular library? Yeah. I mean, I haven't installed anything for
it's just data access. But... Yeah, so data access, because you can have servers. So you can have injectable from Angular inside of it.
Okay. Makes sense. So that's another question really quickly is we're going to put the type definitions in this lib, right? So it's going to be shared data access, and then we'll have exporting the types that we create inside there.
Yep. So lately I've been talking to a friend of mine, and his project is a little bit more complex. And instead of just data access, he calls it infra, which is infrastructure.
Sure.
And in that infra, he has models and then services separately.
So the models is a lib, and then the
services
is a
and
lib
infra
too.
is a directory.
I mean, I can see separating out I don't see separating out the service only because I tend to put my service inside the NgRx lib, because for me, those are right next to each other.
Yeah.
My effects should call to the service, and nothing else is allowed to call to that service. I even don't export the service. It's just the feature itself. Well, we'll hopefully get into that. But so let's start with this. I guess I'll just call it data access, right?
Yep.
And it's going to be in where do we say shared? No, wait.
Yep, it's going to be shared. Yep.
Yeah, that's it, right?
That's it.
Okay, cool. This is still not working. That's just how it goes. Okay.
Is that just your machine, or is that something that NX console has to take a look at?
It could be. Like, it's happened frequently, and then it starts to work again. And I don't know if it's because I don't have stuff installed globally, because when you use npx to install your workspaces, you don't need it globally, or maybe it's something else. I've never looked deep enough into it. I don't use generators that often. It's weird, though. This was working fine in a similar new setup just the other day, so go figure. Also, this is going to keep yelling at me because it doesn't think that strict templates aren't enabled. I can just enable those. It's easy enough. Where are we? Compiler options. Oh, but see, you're supposed to just give me the easy thing, which is like this Angular strict templates. It's fine. Oh no, I got to turn off notifications too. Otherwise, my friends will start talking to me about books. Book club. How do I do this? Do not disturb. There we go. Build the model. I'll have a nice night's sleep. Okay, ignoring that, back to this. I've run this. We still have this loading. Yeah, this is the strict. It's yelling at me because we did turn strict off true. You're absolutely right to have done that, but I didn't do it for the other feature. Okay, and now we have in here our shared data access, where I can start to define some types. So I'm just going to fire this up. Do you put it in a subfolder when you work on it? Like, do you call it models?
Yeah, I call it models.
Okay. I'll do models, and I'll do an index. Yeah, sure. I'll do an index TS, and then I will do TS. I will export interface Druid, and this will have an ID, which is a string, and it'll have a name, which is a string, sure. And it'll have spells, which is a string array. So that's the first thing that I'm keeping in mind here, is that while I need to know the spells themselves, I don't need that information. I just need to know their IDs. Another reason I'm using string here instead of numbers, which you can use numbers, is just that when you start working with lots and lots and lots of data, you're going to end up using a UUID, which is this long string. Like, it has to be a string at that stage. It protects you against some other trouble. So happy to use a string there. I'm also going to already just create this so I don't forget about it later. And that is the spell file, where I'll export interface spell. And that'll have an ID, which is a string. That'll have a name, which is a string, sure. And yeah, I think that's, probably a description. Makes sense. So in here, I would do export star from ./druid. And let's see. Nope, not from Elasticsearch. I love when it gets it wrong, too. That's great. And then here I want to also export star from /lib/models. Perfect.
And I usually delete the module in here.
Okay. Makes sense because I'm not actually going to. I also usually delete my test setup, but I don't want to deal with going to the Angular JSON and deleting it there too. So
Yeah.
fine for now. Okay, so that means
Now the next step would be set up the NGRX store for the Druid.
yeah. Oh, it doesn't have the new definitions yet. If I reload that, there's got to be a way just to restart TypeScript, right?
That should be, yeah. If you look for restart TypeScript, there we go. Restart TypeScript server.
This one?
Yep.
Okay, let's see. Okay, I go Druid. Nope, still didn't find it.
I plan VS Code.
Yeah, could be. No, I know that WebStorm is much faster to pick up these things, but I like VS Code. Okay, it's not the worst thing to break this, and then I can just do reload window, and we'll see what happens. At least I don't have to quit VS Code and restart it again when I do these kinds of things. And all I'm trying to do is get this to auto-complete and pull in from my workspace lib, which it doesn't seem to want to do. So import from at, what are we in? NgRx druids -- data access. All right, now it finds it. Okay, let's launch that back up again. So what did you say you wanted to work on next here?
I'm sorry?
You said you wanted to move over to something else next.
Oh, I mean, I think this is a good time to start
the store, right?
The NGX store for the Druid.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I agree, because then that'll stop yelling at us about this. Okay, so yeah, let's do that. Where do you create it?
All right, so now it's gonna get into a little bit of things going on here. So normally I would start with a data access library in here,
Okay.
in the in the Druid directory, and have my store there. But then you mentioned we might have to pull the selectors from the spells. Then I would go with share store and have my NGRX in the store under share. At least the selectors.
Okay. Okay, so I mean, the main thing is that the way that I want it, and I'm going to dive into the base config here, is I would like it to have its own clear alias as to what feature I'm importing from.
So you're saying like when you import, let's say Druid reducer, you want it to be able to import from a very specific alias of that Druid.
Yeah, I generally like to have these things clean. I can't show my other project where I've been doing this, but an example would be we have, the contacts store, which is a pretty generic type of thing, and we import from our namespace / contacts store, and like that's it. It's as flat as can be, and it might be nested in the actual libs directory, but I do change the alias for that. I might even do the same here. Well, for me, it's weird to call it data access. I have a typo. But like our shared models, like I would reduce that down to just like, models as an import, just, to declutter things a bit. Anyway, personal preference for sure. So you tell me, because we're working through this together. Where do you want to create this?
You know what? Why don't we just start? I guess normally, and then if we run into several dependency and stuff like that, we can take a look at that.
Yeah, perfect.
So first, now I want to create a data access library.
Okay.
Inside of Druid.
All right, so Angular library, and it's going to be Druid store, right?
or you can call it Jewish store if you like.
I mean, that's what we'll eventually export, I guess.
Yeah.
And so this is going to go into
Druids. Yeah, Druids.
Yeah, Druids. And another folder inside that?
No,
Or
I think
we're just
that's pretty much it. Oh, unless you want to put this inside of data access. Usually, I just have data access as a library, but
okay.
if
So
you
you would
want
just
to,
name this data access then.
yeah, it's just data access in my application.
I get it.
Based on your preference, you might want to have that as Jewish store and then put that in the data access directory.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know what else I would put in the data access directory, but
Yes.
what I don't know if I'm like that comfortable having multiple things named the same. I guess that's where it starts to feel weird to me. It's probably wrong, right? Because it's going to create the lib. It's going to be Druid's data access, right? Once if I create it like this, it'll be Druid's data access. Maybe that's fine. I'll try it your way. We'll see. We'll see how I feel. Okay. Yeah, we'll just start with this and close this because it's not working and run this here. Okay. So that's given us inside Druids, we now have a data access, and that gives us a module here.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. So now you're gonna set up your store, right, like you normally do inside of it.
Right. I don't know if we have the generators for these. Let's just see. NgRx. No, we have this adding NgRx support, which is already in place because we did ngadd. And I know there are, this is where some of the schematics might come in handy, but what I will do is the same thing that I often do and copy and paste.
Yep.
So I'll go into I actually only have in this side project one store because it's so interrelated. I have just a big service file here where everything happens. I could pull it out, but it shares so many things. It's all pulling, like, I don't need more than this. And when I do, I'll create something. Okay, so for now, let me go up to the module and I will just borrow these two. Oof, this is going to be a bit. Sure, I'm just going to copy and paste this and delete stuff. That helps. Okay, first is to say we want this to be this. Why am I doing module with providers again? So I can pass data. I don't think I need to do this anymore. Okay, I'm just going to strip this back to here. I usually do module with providers when I need access to local storage and like a kind of persisted state kind of way of doing things. I'm sure there's other better ways to do that, but that's usually what I end up doing. Okay, don't need to export anything. My other one is a bad example because I have both store and like UI stuff happening. I shouldn't do that. I'm well aware, but yeah, you do what works while you're trying to build real features.
Yeah.
I will get rid of these local storage things because we don't need that. And then I don't want any interceptors. Cool, we're fine there too. All right, Quill overlay, get rid of all these. We want effects module. We don't need Cloudinary. File upload, Angular Fire, all that can go. And then I don't actually need the common module, do I? I think everything needs a common module. Okay. And then, well, we're going to be renaming these for now. I won't pass any effects in. Well, I'll leave these here and we'll just rename them. So this is this from mastery, right? That's my other library's name. If we're going based off of this data access model, would we say from Druids if that's the Druid store? Like that?
I usually don't namespace those.
Oh, so you don't even, well,
No.
but this was always a way of avoiding circular dependencies. And so, all right, let me clear out some of this stuff here. Organize inputs. Yay. It's a magical command. Okay, so you don't do it like this when you import from the reducer?
No.
Okay. Good to know. I can get rid of this and this and this, and I'll rename these when it comes. Okay, so let's create our state files in here. Okay, so I am one that still does what they tell me to. And on like their site, they still have this plus state. I don't know why that became the convention, but now it's familiar. File naming, I guess we call it druids, or do you just call it data access?
You would have druids actions.ts and all of that, right?
Yeah, like so, yeah.
Yeah, I usually go with action first.
Oh yeah, I was just going to create them all. But
yeah, okay. Sure.
And I thought I copied that. Druids, that action, and then druids.
I mean, nowadays I just use NGX slice. Yeah.
That's true, yeah. I haven't gotten to that stage yet at all. And I also keep my selectors separate, even though I don't really need to. A lot of people put them in there. And I also normally do my facade, but I'm not going to do that for now. I also keep my service outside of this state folder. And yeah, we'll see if I can get by without using the facade for today.
Yeah.
We'll see. Okay, so in the reducer, let me see if we can do NgRx reducer. Hey, that's cool. That is based on a nice little extension here, Angular Snippets by John Papa, which includes the NgRx ones. It's super useful to just plop these things into place, although it doesn't do the imports. That doesn't take too long to figure out. Yeah, it does. You're supposed to import star from the actions, and this one is to avoid cyclical dependencies, right? You don't do it either?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't see any cyclical dependency to avoid.
I used to see it with the because you're importing from the effects, and then you also you import the actions inside the effects. You import the reducer inside the effects sometimes.
Why?
Sometimes you need to select something from another part of the state. Like the same, concat latest from.
Right.
Right.
But then you would use the store, right? Why would you need the reducer?
Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
That was okay. Well, I'm interested to see if this will work because I guess there used to be, because you needed to tell it what the type of the store was, and the type was defined in the reducer, and yeah, it would get messy. Okay, well, we'll find out what we're doing here. Let's start. I'm going to go into the action here, and I'm going to create the normal 3 that we need to fetch data. So we have an action, which is load druids. Create action. This would be druids, and this is load druids. Okay. Create action will import from
maybe after this we can set up another one, so I can migrate this over to use the slides.
Yeah, okay, I like that. Druids success. Druids. Okay, and then druids is going to be druid gray. I'm not finding it. That's weird. Druid at yeah, okay. And then import props. Okay. And I guess I can do fail, even though every single time we end up just doing error any.
Yeah.
And then TypeScript's like, you shouldn't really use any. It's fine. Okay, cool. So those are all there. In the reducer, then, well, let's see. I'll come back to the initial state momentarily. Here we want to say on grid success, state, and state, and no, this one needs structuring. It's on yet. That's correct. And it's, although we're probably going to turn this into an entity, for now I won't.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to import state, and I guess I need this action. And then let's define constant state.
I think the convention of having the feature reducer and then have a function reducer was for Vue Engine. I don't think you need it for IVE.
Okay.
Let's see if it still work.
In my own one here, let's see what I'm doing. No, I still do that. So you're saying we don't have to do that anymore?
I think so. Let me look up the documentation. I think they can mention it.
Okay, cool.
If they mention it, reducer. Creating the reducer function. Yeah, the exported reducer function is no longer required if you use default IVE AOT compiler. So I'm just going to share this in private chat so you can share with the, oh, not this, sorry, not that one.
Also, Alvaro has dropped by. Hey, man. Good to see you, buddy.
So I just shared in the private chat that creating the reducer function. There. And there's like a little note that it shows that you don't need it for IVE.
It's only, function calls, but what's the alternative? It says you don't need it that way, but then exported reducer function. So you can just import the create reducer directly into where you're using it?
Yeah.
Is that what it means?
Yep.
Okay. So then what I'll do is get rid of that, and we'll export, and we'll call this, just so I know what we're dealing with here, Druid's reducer. Okay, everything's gone away because I was in the middle of this. And from that, oh boy. And, okay. And, perfect. A state is Druid's initial state. Druid's is an empty array, and oops.
And I usually call on line 5, I give that a clear interface of Druid state instead of just state.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so that one's good. We can go back into our module here. Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't finish deleting all of this stuff. So I will import its reducer from ./state/ Druid's reducer, and eventually call this Druid's effects from effects. I haven't renamed it yet. And then here we have the feature key. So I usually put that feature key in the selectors.
Oh, really?
But do I? Let me look.
I
say
think
that.
so, right? Because you're going to use that feature key for the create feature selector.
Yeah, I think, no, I do. I define it in the reducer.
Okay.
And then I import it from there. So I usually do the block case here in the reducer. I just forgot to do that because I wasn't actually copying over. Yeah, I do some weird stuff. Again, these projects, they accrue crud over time, you know.
Yep.
That's pretty normal, and it's hard to refactor. You got to work really hard at it. Okay, so I'm going to do that also here. We're going to call this druids feature key, and I will export that here. Feature key is druids.
GitHub Copilot beat you.
I did, yeah, I didn't notice it. I was typing so fast. It's a super smart thing. Okay, druids reducer and druids feature key, and then here will be druids reducer, and then I don't need the config token because we're not persisting state. And when we get to this, that's pretty cool that we can do that now.
Yep.
I mean, that makes this really straightforward. I'll need the service here as a provider, right? Oh, sorry, not inside imports.
Do you?
I don't know. Do I?
I usually have my service as provided in root.
So when I export the feature, I assume that this, the service is a singleton, and that the app should know nothing about the service at all.
Yeah.
So I end up having it really be owned by this module, which is why it lives kind of alongside of it.
That kind of makes sense.
Especially as long as you remember, and I do this for the facade actually, because the facade is what the components end up using from my side. Although in this case, we're going to have them just use the store, etc. We'll figure out what we're importing from here. But the idea is if I'm using, and let's see if we have this nice autocomplete service for HTTP client. This provided in root, then it will be a singleton, which is pretty cool. So even if we were to use this in multiple places and import it, it'll just use whatever the first one that was bootstrapped with the app is. So,
but
yeah.
I mean,
so yeah, go ahead.
I mean, if a service is not meant to be used outside of its feature, then I just don't export it or expose it as a public API at all.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the way that I conceive of the state, which is to say, I don't want anything to use this service except for the effects.
Yeah.
Like full stop. So I do explicitly include it in here as providers, right? It's providers, isn't it? Service. That way, that's it. Nothing else has to know it exists.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, there's no setup here. Ugh. Really? There's no like fancy thing? You should create that.
Maybe you can go with like a service. You can go with a service.
Yeah,
snippet.
That's true. NgRx service. Oh, not NgRx service, just service. Doesn't need HTTP client. Cool. Doesn't technically need to be provided in root.
No, we don't.
Sure.
We don't need that. We don't need the provided in root.
Yeah.
For this one.
And this will be. Hey, it knows what I want.
Oh,
I spelled it wrong, but it still knew what I wanted. Okay. And then here I would want the service at some stage. Private goods. Services, goods, service. Cool. So this is a small thing. I get the idea that the constructor is supposed to go below all of these definitions, because if this were a component, I would be doing that. But it drives me nuts because I want to see what the constructor has. I don't like it living at the bottom.
Same
so I do the opposite. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, when I look at the class, I want to see what this class is using.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's weird because the effects themselves, they're not like, I got autocomplete going there. They're not methods, but they feel like methods, They feel like they belong below the constructor. This one, call this load druids. We're going to, okay. Yeah, everyone still uses this namespacing. We're trying to not use the namespacing. Load druids. So when load druids fires, and let me import actions. I forgot to do that.
You can also have a namespace without that store import. So in some of my application, we have namespacing for actions and selectors. So instead of load druids, we would have druids actions, not load. And
Oh. Okay. Well, I don't mind. It's
yeah,
really
I mean,
just, you know,
it's
when you start to have a lot of
yeah.
the same things in multiple
Right, that was
places.
just convention,
Sure.
like team convention.
Service that druids, and we will pipe that. Okay, at some stage. Oh, wrong import. Here's my grader. Too much stuff. Probably because this one's wrong. All right, here's a small thing, which is, and this is why when I initially applied to Narwhal ages ago, I didn't get theirs because I was using the wrong operator. I do have some article open that helps me choose. Why isn't it not completing? But I never am quite sure what I'm getting into. And yeah, do you have any like quick ways that you remember what the right way or wrong way to do it
So
is?
so CRUD, right? Read for reading, switch map.
Okay, so if you're just pulling data, switch map is fine.
Switch map is the one to use because if if this effect invokes multiple times, you only want to read from the latest one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that's a good way to think of it.
For write operations, concat map or exhaust map.
Sense knew what I needed. So for exhaust map or concat map. So do you ever use merge map?
Very rarely.
No. I ended up using merge map for most of them in other projects. It hasn't caused any troubles yet necessarily, but yeah. Okay, this is going to take...
Why is it screaming at you?
It's screaming at me because... Well, I don't know why it's screaming at me. Oh, because this isn't returning anything yet, and then that breaks the whole thing.
Yes, yes.
So, okay, I'll define this here, which is, we said load druids, doesn't need any arguments. Sure, why not? Well, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say of, and now I'll just pass an empty array. No, I'm going to make up a druid. I'll do this up here. Almost. Druids. And that is... God, can't type my letters today. Druid. Array. Equals. Object with an ID of 34. Sure. Name of Evan. And I don't think we put anything else, did we? Oh, spells.
Spells, yeah.
Spells is empty for now.
Yep.
And then I'll duplicate this. 1, 2, 3, 5. This will be Chau. And there we have our two druids. So we will return that array. This returns observable druid array. Thank you. Why is this yelling at me? Oh, yes. It's yelling at me because it's a method. Jeez. Okay, we got it. Now if I go back to the effects, it's not yelling at me. All is happy. Yeah, we've got this happy path is in place, and now we just need the selectors. I'm also going to copy and paste some of these, such as this, to get me started. So create feature selector from NgRx, and
Yep. You don't need that host to state or to generics there. You can just use the Druid state.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's good to know as well. Druids state, cool. And this is, we use get or select.
And you select.
Me too. But I've done it differently on different projects because I'm never quite certain. Okay, so there's that. And then we want to let's select all druids equals create selector, select druid state. Yep, good enough.
Yep.
Wow.
And
That does speed things up.
You can try removing the Druid state on line 5. It should still give you that Druid correctly.
Yes, it does. Yeah, of course. It traces that through. Nice. Okay, cool. So now we have that. I'm so used to having this in my facade, I'm not going to know what to do for this next stage. Because normally, and it's kind of silly, I'll show you. The facade really just takes the selectors and gives them a name that is more clear that it's an observable. And I know I don't need to do, anyway. And the same thing for these. It just wraps around the dispatch. And it's not to hide the dispatch. For me, I mostly just used it to hide the store. And then I got so used to it, I don't need to do that anymore. But then, yeah.
So okay. in my previous job, they were big on facade. And then I came in, and they got all of this component store things going.
Yeah.
And we ended up dropping the facade, and for our common library, we exposed the selectors and actions under those namespace, just like I just told you. So we have the product selectors, product actions, and we use the component store as a facade for a specific component.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So we drop the facade entirely.
Yeah, and I can see that. Again, I started using it because it was convenient to do. But yeah, I mean, sorry, there. I don't need it anymore because we don't need to give per feature types anymore. So it was previously, it was that when I was importing into the constructor of the components that were using it, such as, I just had it in mind. Oh no, that's in my other project. So such as in here, when I would import this, you would have to say what it was, right? It would have to be Druid store or whatever. Right. And that for me was like, well, I do want my component to know that it's using this, but maybe I don't. And maybe I'm not completely sold on it, because in the actual like practice here, let's go to mention list. I'm very explicitly using this mastery store feature, whereas I'm guessing if we get to the Druids, I won't explicitly be using that. I'll just be doing the store.
Right. And
then also importing from the feature.
Right.
Yeah.
Completely understand. Yeah.
So it's a mixed. We'll try it for now this other way, and we'll see. And yeah, I mean, it's nice to have opinions. Okay, so this took a while, but we got to a place where we've actually exported what we need, so we can potentially use it.
Yep.
So let's go use it. Back over to our list. And here in the module, I would need to
import that data access module.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can have like the HTTP client module, your data access, or you should have that as the root app module. I forgot how it behaves.
I mean, it's in here because the service needs it.
Right, but do you import that in every data access module for the feature? I usually just import it once in the app module.
I don't know. I'm not the best at understanding how modules work.
I mean, I completely forgot how this HTTP client module behaves.
Yeah, I think it's smart enough that it's a singleton, as in it knows. So if you import it, it's just going to use the one. So that's fine. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't need to be here. It certainly would need to be in the app in that case. But what if, like, the app is really flat right now, right?
Yep.
We're trying to not have anything in here. Like, we do have the router, the store, and I guess we could have HTTP client because we assume we'll need it. But potentially, if the app didn't need that, it wouldn't until a feature used it. You know what I mean?
Right. That is correct.
So, it probably, I would leave it out. So I would let the features handle it. And that is only based on the assumption that this is going to be a singleton and it's not going to be injectable for root.
It makes sense. Okay. I would go with that. Yeah.
Yeah, we can stick with that for now. So here in the featured list, we just need to import the Druid's featured list module. No, that seems wrong.
Druid's data access module.
Right, which doesn't find, of course. I'm sure that's what it's called. Yeah, that's what it's called. And I'm exporting. Yeah, I'm exporting it. Thanks, IntelliSense. Really coming through for me tonight. Let's do this manually for some reason. And Druids. I see. This is where it throws me off a bit. But I guess we're in this one. Okay. No, but now it doesn't. Now it's not happy with me. Okay. We did it. Okay, so now that we have that imported in, we'll have access to what we need. And then here in the constructor, I can do private store is store from NgRx. And then I'll probably want to be importing like what? Well, let's just define this here. Another small question is, do you define here, or do you do it in two places?
No,
do you say like?
I know I do inline.
Me too.
And I don't even have that type.
No, that's true. I was only doing that to help. Hey, it knows what I want. That thing is so smart.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Okay, so why is it? Oh, because it doesn't have access to that anymore. Okay. What are we calling
all
it?
Druids.
This is select all Druids. Okay, so if I remove this now, it should still have that as the type. Observable Druid array. That's pretty cool. Yeah, there was a discussion going on Twitter recently as well of like, what do you? I think Wes Boss asked it. What do you where do you enforce types and where do you allow it to be inferred? Honestly, the longer I go on, the better IntelliSense gets. I'm happy to let it be inferred, like, and only put it on places where you're literally defining new things.
Yep, same thing. Same here. I explicitly set it if the type is complex, but if you put in a type, it actually is not much, but it actually makes TypeScript slower because it has to compare the infer type with the type you explicitly set.
Huh. Never thought about it that way. That's good to know. Okay. I wonder about these, like this one's uppercase and this one is lowercase.
Yeah, I usually have my actions lowercase.
I think I'll change it. But again, it's one of those things where it goes back and forth between projects, and then I'm not sure what standards to follow necessarily. I should have done a rename. Oh well.
Yeah.
One at a time. Oh, why am I doing this one at a time? What's wrong with me? Sure. Here. No. That's good. And then there. All right. Good. Back over to here. This is with me. This one too. Okay, now we're done. So
Why your reducer is screaming at you?
yeah, why is my reducer screaming at me?
Oh, you have to give the initial state of Druid state. So on line 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Why is it yelling at me in the compiler and not in my IDE?
I have no clue. I think because we turn off straight.
Yes, it's probably that. Okay. Hey, look, we have druids. They're here. It's amazing. Finally, after all of that work.
After an hour.
It's only an hour, yeah. But I think the idea is really we're redoing this to kind of catch up to what the current standard maybe should be to provide a definition. And I swear I'm going to have this library now sitting open in the background for months and copy and paste from it as like, this is the perfect clean state. This is how we should do it from now on. So
yeah, I think NgRx has evolved so much over the time, and that people are so stay with the old way. Like I look at some of the old code base that's still using the star import. It's so hard to refactor.
Yeah, it really is. I had to go do that on a project recently of not using even the ons, the action creators or create reducer, and bring it up to the speed because it was a few years out of date. In some ways, it's fun if you like that kind of tedious, don't miss anything work, but it was hard. Okay, so I think that we can
go with the spells now, I guess.
Yeah, do the spells and literally copy and paste and swap from druids to spells. So let me do a generator here. Let me understand what I'm going to do though first. So we have spells, and I'm going to create, not worrying about the feature list yet. I'm just going to do the data access first. So I will create a library data access inside spells, and then copy and paste. That's kind of all that's needed. Oh, and we already have the types. So okay. Nx console generate library. We're going to call it data access as well, and it's going to be in
spells.
Okay, that's still not working. It's fine. It's for access spells. Cool. Close that. Go over here, and now we have spells data access. Okay, this is one thing that I wish. Oh no, wait, I can do this. I'm just gonna do this and move it into lib, and then I'll rename all of these time, but that's still a lot easier than it was before. Data access models. I'm also going to just copy this guy across and spells. All right, now what I'm going to see what I can do here is I'm going to take druid singular and I'm going to do find druid. I don't think I have any lowercase, so I'm going to fix that to capital. And then I'm going to limit my search to libs/spells. I can't replace that one. That's not cool. But everywhere else is perfect.
Yeah, you can exclude that. Is lim.
Oh yeah, good idea. rc.json. Okay, not bad. And then I can replace that with the spell. And it should just kind of do everything, right?
Awesome.
I love that. Okay.
That's a good trick.
Place all. Do it. Yes. Hey. All right. Well, I didn't quite get everything. I forgot to do one lowercase. No, we don't want to. Oh, do we want to replace import spell? No, that one stays where it is because our root level is Druid. All right, I can't do that. Still, we were very close. It's not the end of the world. I can even fix case here and just look for Druids. No, the whole namespace is called that. All right, that's still, it's not the worst. Spells goes there, and the effects, spells. Oh yeah, we also have the service, which doesn't really matter if it's named the wrong thing, but spell service, user, spells. Okay, well, there's a few more places. At least we're lightweight. It's not the worst thing ever.
I guess on live 5 as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I always forget that one. Oh, this one I'm actually going to do the proper way and rename symbol to spells feature key. And that should persist it. I might have to hit save on those other files, but that's good. And this file's okay. In here, we need this to be spells. And in the service, yeah, there's no spells as part of that. So I do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. And let's see. Wild Shape is a good druid spell. And what's another good druid spell? Shillelagh, but I don't know how to spell Shillelagh. Oh, come on. Where's my daughter plays a druid. That's one of her spells. All right, anyway, I'll try and type Shillelagh. Oh, no. It's not going to work. It's terrible. I'm a terrible D&D player, not being able to think of another one. Description. Oh, wait, it gave me a description. Hey, that's pretty fun. Make up random spell names and add descriptions for it. That's cool.
That is cool.
Good stuff.
There's actually there's been talks that instead of just training GitHub Copilot on like open source code code bases, people are thinking about like training GitHub Copilot from like the community chat, like platforms like Discord and stuff like that, because a lot of helps come from those platforms.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's magical in that it also pulls from the context. Like it knows the files you're in, and it knows like what you've installed, and like it's doing a lot of work under the hood.
Yep.
I kind of dread the day that they're like, well, that was a great experiment. Now you have to pay for it. Oh man, because they are fully within their rights to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a pretty nice experience.
Yeah. Okay, I think we got it. So, hey, that's the power of the boilerplate, is it's pretty quickly to fire up some new stuff. But okay, this starts to get a little weird, right? So we're in our features and our list, and we have our Druid list, but now we need to begin to compose them together.
Right.
So let me add into our temporary store here. Let's say that I have a spell which is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you have a spell which is 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. So we know that those ideas already exist. Now, our goal here would be in our list component to show the detail, like show the spells. So I would create like a div here, which would have like, I don't know, each 2 of spells. And then this would have a list of the spells based off of, so let, we kind of want to pre-fill into our component the full spell and sort of unflatten the state. So our state is going to give us that there's just an ID for this spell. But we want to, in our component, then display the full spell details. I mean, how would you go about doing this?
I can
this being
I can
sorry.
have a selector. So hold on. One thing we can do, we can compose a selector inside of the Druid selector, and we can bring in the selector from the spell to put everything in under the all Druids. So basically, Druid.spell is going to have the whole spell instead of just the ID.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's
what I
one
was.
way.
That's one way. That's what I was thinking too. Only because it's easy to compose it this way.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there's other ways to do it too.
Another way is to have this component. So let's assume that your our spells is an entity, right?
Right.
So we can have this Druid list component, a select from the spell selector, and we can just use a spell from Druid.spells and look up that thing inside of the entity and grab the spell.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I get the idea. So we would basically like have a selector that takes an ID and then we subscribe. But then how do you build that? Because essentially it's dynamic based on how many druids they are. So look, in a practical world, we probably wouldn't show the spells in the overview, right? We would then wait until you go in and you have a single druid, and then that approach makes perfect sense.
Right, but then even though the druids are dynamic, we have limited amount of spells anyway. I mean, the spells have to be created or have to exist before a druid can select it.
Correct.
So I'm assuming that the Druid.spells IDs, those IDs always have a spell associated with them.
Yeah, I mean, we can add some error handling, but for now we can, yes, assume that.
Yeah.
And if they didn't, we would filter them out just to make sure that we do find one.
Right. So I think one thing I would like to do here is to go back to the spell selectors.
Okay. Spell selectors.
Can we turn this select all spells into an entity, like using reduce?
Sure. Do you just want to use NgRx entity?
Do you have it installed?
I think I did. Let me look. If I don't, well,
it's all right.
Install it. Why wouldn't I have installed it? I love entities. All right, it's fine. We can turn it into an entity.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's just have another, I guess, selector. Select spells entities, I guess.
Yes, that's wishful thinking.
And we have the select, instead of select spell state, we do select all spells.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and that state is going to be that spells array. So now we could just do reduce. Right. Yeah, it gives you that. It gives you that.
It did, but then it went away. I had it. Wait, come back. That was a good one.
Oh, no.
Wait, it's option. It never works when I press this. Oh, no, it's gone now. All right, well, close enough. And then it had it again, and then I hit enter just to fix this part, which is always half complete.
There we go.
Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
I don't like doing it this way. I never do that to my objects.
And so what would you do? Do you return
I would always return.
So okay, so here's a little something in case you don't know. If you have reduce, if you write reduce, try not to return a spread, because every time you reduce, you return a new object, so that memory comes up a lot. Instead, you could just mutate your accumulator, like 8 there. So this is a more performant way.
Oh, okay.
And actually, you need to provide like an empty object as the default. Yep. So now you only have one object and you accumulated it instead of return a new object every time.
Okay. So the other problem though is that this one isn't typed.
You can do as a record. It's gonna
Said
be
we string is the
spell.
ID
Yep.
and spell. Yeah.
Yep. Now you
Now
need to
I have to
import.
import spell. Now it can find it. Go figure.
Right. Now go back
Magic.
to the component.
Okay, let me just copy this because we'll use it. So in our list component.
Yep. Now what I want to do, I want to do a let's select. Let's create that selector. I mean that variable with a select.
Okay.
So
Well,
all spells entities.
yes. Let's call it just spell entities. Is this dot store dot select paste, and I need to import that. Nope. Okay. I will need to load spells, but okay.
Right, you need to load spells.
Yeah. This is spells. Right? Isn't that? Oh, because it. What? No, that should work. Maybe I forgot to read. Because I didn't copy and paste that and rename stuff. Wait, I'm looking for Druid's data access. Yeah, okay. Good to know. And we're calling this type anymore. Right? No, I put it in the wrong place.
Yeah.
I'm getting tired. It's getting like it's 9:30 now.
Oh.
That's okay. We're nearly to a good spot, and you know we can come up and convert this to slice at some stage in the future, if we feel up for that. Cool. All right, now I can import this. That's great. And load spells is great too. Oops, too many times. Load spells.
Okay.
Druids. Now identities. Okay.
Yeah. Now what I would like to do is go to the Druid list component.html.
Wait, let me save there.
Yep, and wrap everything inside ng container.
Just the whole thing?
Yep. I'm gonna do a lazy way. And here we're gonna do an ngF. ngF is gonna be an object with our Druid colon our Druid async.
Never done this. This is cool.
Do async. Do async.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, and do the same thing for spells entities.
Yeah, spell entities.
And outside of this object, do as VM. So now VM, which is view model or whatever you like. So now instead of like ng4 or Druids async, we do vm.all_druids.
Okay. I had no idea you could do it that way. That's really cool.
So instead of that object in the ngF, you would compose like a VM observable.
Right.
But then it's all right. So now in between line 8 and line 9, we can just grab that spells and do the square bracket with the spell entities and display the spell.
Okay. So we still get the spells, which is actually spell ID.
Right.
Spell IDs.
No,
this?
I think it's just the ID now because you ng4 over it, right? So no.
Oh yeah, duh. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. And then in here we can say.
I would just do a pre JSON.
A what?
A pre tag with a JSON type.
But I think it we can almost get to it, right? Because what we want to do here is just get the spell name, right?
Oh, okay. Then we just do spell entities, spell ID.name.
VM spell entities.
Yeah.
And then spell ID, right?
Yeah.
That should be it. Yes, dot name.
And you can.
I feel like we completely lost the typings though, but I don't think that's. I think that's just the IntelliSense inside here, not knowing how to handle that. Maybe. Okay, cool. This will be. Well, it's fine. Actually, I don't need any pre-tag.
Yeah, you don't need
I can
that.
just do it inside here. Okay, that's super cool. Now why is it yelling at me? Error occurs in here. Object is possibly null. Yeah, well, that's true. Again, strict isn't on, so it's not yelling at me. Yeah, object is still possibly null. Sure. Is VM possibly null? Are you going to yell at me about that?
No. I don't think so.
Track by. I didn't create the track by.
Yep.
Okay. Sure. This is going to be the same thing.
That's the spell ID. So just return the ID there.
This is spell.
I think that's a spell ID.
You're right.
Yeah.
Spell ID. And that's a string. Return the ID. Not find name, because I called it spell ID. Okay.
So
yelling at no, we did it. So if we go and look, I don't see spell names.
Cannot read properties of undefined. Reading spells. It's trying to look for spells.
Why is it trying to
Druid's undefined.
Druid is undefined. That's a little weird, isn't it?
It's a little weird.
We didn't go outside of here, and it's getting the name of the Druid.
I would put like on like 2 a breed of VM JSON. So that's my way of debugging on the template.
Oh, okay.
I do a breed outside of the UL. So a VM JSON. Yeah. Oh, spell entities is no. Did you set the effects correctly?
Yeah, that's a good question. Oh, yeah. You know what I didn't do is import spells access model.
Yeah. That's what we missed. Absolutely.
I will say that this is honestly what being a senior is. It's not necessarily knowing it all. It's being able to quickly figure out what you made a mistake on.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Now is that going to be good? No, it's. Oh wait, it's still reloading. No, it's still wrong. Okay. Well, maybe getting closer. Spell entities is still null, and you might be right about the effects. Maybe. Let me go look inside the spells data access. The effects is spells effects, and in the module we don't do. Yeah, I also didn't copy and paste anything module wise. Yeah, tried to move too fast. Okay, let me take the imports as a bulk thing. Paste that. Okay, want that just in case. This. Want spells feature key. Want spells reducer. Want spells effects, and we want effects module, and we want spells service. Ooh, now it's angry. Module build failed. Yeah, this is not declared. Let me just.
I would restart. Yeah.
Yeah, I would restart. Okay, cool beans.
There we go.
Positive so far. Yeah. Okay. Let me remove the debugger so we can get some nice clean look at that. Well, I'll just comment it out in case we want it later. Okay, so we are now reading from the 2 places. That's perfect. Okay, now I'm going to throw the curveball, and this was why I wanted us to have this call. Okay, And this will be the last thing we work on, and we'll end the stream probably about after 2 hours. So good timing. Okay, so so far so good, right? We have the druids themselves, which are, who knows where they're managed, but they're managed in one place. We have the spells, which are managed in another. But what if we want there to be spell creators, and those spell creators can be druids? So let's say that the creator of Wild Shape is actually Chau.
So now that's where the circular dependency comes in.
Yeah, it has this feeling of like, well, I mean, I know the component doesn't necessarily care, and we can sort of compose, but where does that selector live? Because now the selector is going to have to be a composition. Probably, maybe not.
So now let's go back to our spell interface.
Okay.
Right. So now we have that creators array of IDs, right? Oh no, just one creator. Sorry.
Correct. Yeah. Well, probably there'll be multiple. They'll want co-credit, but let's stick with one for now.
Right now. So now
it'd be a little explicit too, and just call it creator ID.
So now your service is gonna yell at you.
Spell service. Well, too fast. Yeah, and it's gonna expect.
All right. So let's see that I'm creating that one. So.
Yeah. Wait. You were 6, I think.
Hopefully so.
We'll find out if he yells at me, and then I will have been the one that creates the other. Cool. I'll double check that just in case. Where are we? Druid data access, and in our service here. Oh, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 5 is you, and 1, 2, 3, 4 is me. Okay.
Right. So again, what I would do here with this, what I would do here is the same thing. I'm gonna have an odd druids entity, and just look it up from the spell.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the druid selectors, we would. I'll copy from the spell selectors. Do the same thing here. And so we select druid entities and select all druids. Type in state.reduce. Call this druid just to be consistent. And this will return. I'm just not used to typing this word. Okay. Cool. So we have this now. We've exported from there, so I can go back to my component now. Druid list component. I'll do this same thing here, which will be druid entities. Okay, that's fine.
And I guess do the same thing. Add that to the VM and just look it up. Now the template looks a little bit messy now. This is where I would use like component store to compose all of these stream into my like what I want to really show on the models. I mean on the template, which is my view model.
Right. It'll be in line, but I'll break it onto 2 lines. Created by, and I will break this. Sure, it's gonna get messy.
It's gonna get messy.
I want. Well, no, I have to create something, right? A container to do stuff on. So you want, don't I?
What do you want to do?
I just wanted to list the
name of the creator.
The name of the thing.
So we just do VM does druid entities, and we pass in, instead of spell ID, We just pass in VM that spells entities.
Oh no, we have the Druid. Yeah, sorry.
So just copy the whole
VM.
line 16.
Mhm.
And instead of the name, we use creator ID.
Right. Okay.
So now
in
this gets a
here,
little bit too much.
yeah, no kidding. Creator ID
But it would work.
and that name. Yeah. Let's see.
Let's see.
Yells at
Okay.
me.
Yes, that's you.
Type undefined could not be used.
I would just put
Yeah.
any, and we just put any, wrap it in any. So the VM spells entities to creator ID. So on line 17 right there, inside the square bracket, like cut the whole thing.
Just get rid of it?
Just cut it. Yeah. And do $sign any. And paste that back in. Oh no, with parentheses. And any is a function. Yeah.
I've never used any.
You should not.
That's
you should not.
Yeah, you should not. Okay, good.
Let's see
nothing to see here. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Okay. Wow. Okay. So we ended up getting that to work. I guess that makes sense. What bothers me a little about it is that there's so much of this sort of composition happening here, and then the template and the component.
Yep.
And I tend to lean on the side, and Tim DeShriver has a lot of articles about that, right? Of doing as much of your composition in the selectors as possible.
Correct.
So in the end, you're displaying a card, which is what we want to display. We should probably have created a specific object that already precompiles this stuff in the selectors.
Yeah.
And then that was my main concern was, well, it doesn't belong in, it does belong in Druid selectors because that's the top level, but then Druids and spells need to know about each other, maybe.
Yep. I think that's where like a share store library comes into play.
Exactly. So yeah, that was like, we talked about this a lot. I've brought it up on both Twitter and on in the Discord for NgRx, and the thing we all ended up settling on was you need a third, at least a third selector library that does this sort of composition.
Yep.
Yeah.
In like simple application, I would just not worry about that third selector. I would just use like component store for this Druid list and compose it in a store. But if we want to go like good practice, definitely a third library, selector library.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, this is a very contrived example to get to that problem, but where I've seen it happen again and again, often, is you have this sort of, what the whole app needs to function. It might be things like, hey, what is the current user? That's something you need to know, and like, what's their name and their ID. But then you also need to know, do they have access to this page? Technically, that can be handled in the backend. That's fine. But then if they do, which page are they accessing? Does it have a particular theme that comes from the admin side that's being defined? I need to load a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you have this sort of top level like app store. I end up calling it. It's maybe settings store or something like that. Then that combines with preferences, which is the stuff that you allow the user to set on top of what the admin specified. And then it just starts to get super messy because you want to put stuff into this top level store, but then you also don't want too much in there. So then it balloons and becomes this giant kitchen sink of a mess. You're trying to separate into features, but then there's these cross reliances. So you kind of move everything gradually up into the top level again.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this is a good example of a way to solve it. And just to get us to that last stage, what I'll do is I'll create, and this part's hard, is what to name it.
So in my application, I have Can I share my screen?
Yep, sure. If you offer, I think I can allow you to, right?
Yeah. Share screen. All right.
Okay, cool.
Let me increase the font size.
Thank you.
Go to 32. So this a sneak peek. This is a main stack application tutorial that I'm working on.
Nice.
And so in my store module for root, I have the router for the router reducer from the NGRX router store, and also an auth reducer, which is an authentication, which is basically an app root level state.
Mhm.
I store these inside of share. I call it store, and inside this I have an auth effect or slice and router selectors and stuff like that. Now, in your case, instead of the store being a library, I would have like a store, actually share, right?
Mhm.
Store, and inside of store, I would have a root as a library and a composition as the stuff that we want to do. So composition is a library, root is a library.
Okay.
So this is one way to solve it. And like you said, I would have like a shared store to hold all of my app level or root level stuff, just like this one.
Okay. Yeah. So that's like the app store kind of,
Yeah.
top level.
If you have like settings, right? Settings.
Yeah.
Settings. Would go here, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. And then because you're already in the same place, then having the rest of it also makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so I won't go through that now. We're kind of coming up to the end of our time.
Yeah.
I think so, because it's getting late. You've got work to do, I'm sure. I think we should do it again. We'll see what the response is like. If people, have tuned in, and if they watch the video afterwards. But despite the setup, I do think we got to a good place to describe some of these things. I guess one last thing you and I can touch on to maybe set up for next time is how does component store even fit into this? So I've read some of the docs, and it's a little like I don't really understand. I'm so used to the global state.
Completely understandable. All right, so let's assume. Can you go back to your Druid list component?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, I want to print.
Okay, so in this Druid list component, actually, can you pull up a template?
Yeah.
So in here, we're saying we display all Druids along with all the spells, along with all the creators of the spells. Sure. Let's assume that this component, we have a flag, and this flag, if we turn it on, then we're going to show the spells. If we don't turn it on, we don't show the spell. Basically that for all Druids.
Okay.
Now this flag is the component state, the state of this component.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you kind of have global states and then some component state. Maybe there's like a form to search for Druids. All of that can be put inside of the component store, and the component store can inject the global store and compose object state inside of the component store, completely separate from the UI logic.
Yeah, okay. I mean, this is something that maybe we really do need to schedule another session, because that's another problem I have a lot, is this handing off of things. I mean, NgRx is already hard for people to understand because when you dispatch the action, you can trace through to that action, but that's you can't IntelliSense your way through anymore. You have to know that it either ends up in the reducer or the effects, and then you can trace through to the service, then back to the reducer. And then you also have to know that you can jump back to whatever's using the selectors at that point. So it already takes a bit of time. And the prime example here is when you need to, like, on demand, you need to make a service call, right? You need to request some data when they click a button, not just when they route or like if there's no data present. It's something very practical to the point where you want to show a loading spinner, and then when the data populates or the new item is created, that's a great one. You need to then update the UI. But the thing is, you've lost it unless you send a UUID along with it. So I have this thing that I do it in the facade because I was just doing it so frequently, where I import this from UUID, and when I create something new, I will create a UUID. I will return that to the component that has dispatched this action. So that's a nice use case for the facade, actually. So I'll get back the UUID, and then in the component itself, let's go down to, this create record. I'll have this UUID that I get back saying, hey, create these details, and I will then immediately subscribe to a single selector of that UUID. And then when I know that it's been created, I'll do something.
Okay. I have a pretty similar use case to this, which can be solved inside of the component store.
Okay, cool. So, hey, all of you watching, tune in next time and we'll go through this in a little more details. And I hope you leave comments on the video. I hope that you, share your thoughts, and we can go into this in a lot more detail.
Yeah, I hope you learned something today.
Cool. All right. So, Chau, hey, man, thank you so much for spending the time with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Really cool to talk through these, and I'm excited for tomorrow and the Narwhal, like the NX conference.
I guess shameless plug. So everyone, NXConf, the first, conference of NX is happening tomorrow. It's going to be a 2 days event. It's all free, all online. You can go to nx.dev/conf to have details about all the talks, all the speakers, and sign up. So I hope to see you guys there.
Yeah, really good. I'm definitely going to be there. Maybe not for every session, I still got to do some work during the day, but I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these things. So those of you that tuned in, those of you that watched it later, thanks so much. Caleb, good stuff. Thanks. Thanks for watching.
He's my coworker at my previous job.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in. And leave comments. Say down below. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.
Thank you.